Hi, this is Jaxler, and this is a submission video for Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, all bosses unrestricted. Before we begin, I wanted to mention that there is a table of timestamps in the video description that link to cool moments in the run, such as the flashier movement segments, as well as the crazy glitches that Soul Reaver has to offer. I recognize that y'all in committee are super busy and stretched for time, so feel free to make use of that as a resource to get a better idea of what to expect with this run. Alright, let's get going in 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so welcome to Soul Reaver 1. I want to make very clear that this is being done on the original release of the game as opposed to the remaster that came out for this game in December of last year. They're two separate games and have separate leaderboard pages as a result, but the original release of the game has a ton of unique glitches and strats that just didn't make it over quite the same in the remaster. And as a result, I think it's one of the most entertaining speed games to watch. It is just so funny from a visual perspective, and I don't want to spoil anything too much yet, but trust me. So while we're here, I want to mention what this category is and what it involves. First off, this is an unrestricted run, meaning that as opposed to no major glitches, we can use any glitch or technique that we want to. Additionally, this is an all bosses run, so as opposed to an any % run where you just go and defeat Kain, the final boss, as quickly as you can, there's a couple other things we need to take care of. Namely, our 4 vampire brothers, Dumah, Zephon, Rahab, and Melchiah. They are kind of like Zelda bosses in a way, where once you defeat them in kind of at the end of their dungeon, they'll give you a new ability that you can then use to go to new areas. And so the order in which you do them doesn't really matter for the purposes of the category, but we are going to take on Melchiah first because we really want his ability early on, and I'll explain why once we get further into things here. But one thing you'll notice right off the bat as we exit this cutscene is that the movement in this game is a little bit funky. Instead of analog movement, you have 8-directional movement with WSAD. And so as a result, it's a little funky to kind of steer yourself. So what I'm going to be doing a good bit is kind of holding forward and then either tapping a little bit in either direction or using the camera buttons to steer me. That gives me a little bit more degrees of freedom and a little bit more flexibility with how quickly I can turn around. So we're going to be picking up a warp gate here, and something I want to mention as well with the camera controls is that they're actually bound to 2 separate buttons, pan left and pan right, so you also don't really have a camera stick as well like you have in your traditional modern action-adventure games in 3D. So it takes a little bit to get used to, but those limitations actually breed a lot of interesting exploits and glitches that make this run possible in the first place. So, alrighty, so one thing we're going to do here as well, in this tutorial section where we're kind of making our way out of the Abyss and the Spectral Realm, is doing all of the tutorials mostly vanilla, and that's because there are these gates, like that hexagonal one in the back, that don't close unless you do what the Elder God tells you to here. But there are a couple of things we can do here to speed these up. On this soul well right here, I'm going to line myself up in a specific spot so that once I start feeding on the souls here, instead of spawning the actual actor, it will just instantly put the soul into Raziel's belly here, and it skips a little bit of waiting around for the soul to appear, and it saves a couple seconds per. Alright, so this is the first major glitch we're going to see. It's a double crouch jump. Normally you can only jump once, and at best do a crouching high jump. So how did I get 2? So that makes use of a glitch called the breakout glitch, which allows you to break out of any animation that you're doing. The way that you set this up is by crouching and then holding down the 2 camera buttons to prime the game into putting you into first person mode. If you then pull up the glyph select menu, it interrupts the crouch in such a way that it allows you to crouch while in that first person state, which allows you to uncrouch and get freedom of movement. Whenever you're in this state where you can walk around with the first person mode active, if you let go of the camera buttons, it will cancel whatever animation you're doing. So in the case of the double crouch jump, I do a crouch jump and then activate that breakout state, which then allows me to chain it into another double crouch jump because the game still thinks I'm grounded then. So that's what a double crouch jump is. We're going to see another one in a little bit, and the whole breakout glitch in general is going to be a foundational step for most of the glitches that we're going to see in this game, all but one, I would say. And it's kind of like the Swiss Army knife. There's so many little things and optimizations that you can do with the breakout glitch. And it's worth noting that the breakout glitch does work in the remaster as well, but it has some slightly different properties and works a little bit differently. So we're going to go ahead and phase back into the material realm here so we can make our way through the game. This is one of the cool game mechanics that this run has, where you can phase back and forth between the material world and like the ghostly spectral realm, and the environments change and the platforming changes, and certain abilities work and others don't, depending on which realm you're in. So we need to be in the physical realm here because we need to go through a door, and you can only interact with like physics objects when you're in the material realm here. This is also where the game tells us that, hey, don't swim in water just yet. It will burn you alive. And we're going to take that advice. So there's going to be a bit of a complicated sequence in this next room, so I'm going to explain it a little bit in advance. So once I cross this gap, I'm going to be doing a breakout glitch next to the door to break out of the door opening animation, which is going to allow me to run through here a little bit faster. And then after I get out of this cutscene, I'm going to land on the other side of this water pit and do a double crouch jump to get up and over a cutscene trigger where these enemies are like, hey, you shouldn't be here. I'm going to try to bite your face off. And so by skipping that trigger, it prevents them from aggroing and also saves several seconds. From there, I'm going to essentially do a cutscene overlap setup with the breakout glitch, and I'll kind of explain a little bit more once I get there. Alright, so there we go, we're up and over, and then I'm going to do these block pickup animations which prevent a cutscene from playing. And so I'm going to do 2 more of these right here, and then I'm going to do the breakout glitch, and then break out of that crouched pickup. This is going to cause a tutorial dialogue for the cube, as well as defeating enemies to play at the same time, meaning that they overlap, and so I regain control during the latter of the two. This allows me to push this block during the cutscene, which saves several seconds. It also just instant kills the enemies, and it looks very funny. Alright, so one of the most broken glitches in the game, and also one of the trickiest to set up, this is called the Timestop Glitch, and I need to be right in between 2 loading zones here. So you're going to see that glyph menu flicker, and then I need to close the glyph menu on the frame that I transition between the two. So you'll notice he sways left to right there, and once he sways, like, between one loading zone and another, that activates this state, which allows you to walk around with the glyph menu open. And this has some really interesting properties. So I closed the glyph menu, and then reopened it next to that cube, and then reclosed it again. This stores the state where it thinks I'm standing next to a cube, and allows me to do things like push the block and pull it up. And so as a result, if you try to pull up a block that doesn't exist, it will just perform the animation and send you to a randomable spot. And in that case, it allows us to clip ourselves out of bounds and get past that wooden door in the time stop state. Now, the other big feature of time stop is that it prevents cutscenes from playing. And so normally on the other end of that door, there is a 2-minute long cutscene where we learn a bit more about the world of Nosgoth, but that's really slow. So by doing that setup, we saved about 2 minutes right there. Combined with time stop and the double crouch jumps, we're going to have a lot of ways of skipping cutscenes through the early game here. So we're going to do another one of those breakout glitches on the door. As you can see, it allows you to walk through the door as it's opening, which just makes the movement a little bit faster here. And then this is probably the easiest cutscene skip in the game. You just jump over it with a crouch jump. They just didn't make it tall enough, unfortunately, for them. That also works in the remaster, too, funnily enough. The remaster for this game is pretty sick because it stays pretty faithful to both this and Soul Reaver 2. But like I said, there are some differences, including one major one that I'll talk about once we get there. But right here, we're going to be forced into a fight here, although force is in quotation marks because I'm going to do a double crouch jump into a glide to try to escape it here. That was really good height. So if you're too low there on the second crouch jump, what'll happen is you'll land on a slope and get sent all the way back down to the ground, which is not what you want there. So we got that first try. That was pretty good. So we're going to get into this little cutscene here, and you're going to notice that I kind of walked backward and then forward once I landed. And that's because of the way this game's loading planes work. So essentially the way it works is that the game will usually load like one area in advance in order to save on memory. And so you need to make sure that you go through all of the loading transitions in order. Otherwise the collision will load, but like transitions into other areas won't, and you won't be able to progress. Also, for that breakout glitch right there, on the metal grate doors specifically, you can just walk through them once you've activated the breakout. I don't know why, but it is very funny. So we did a double crouch jump right there in order to skip going around the corkscrew stalos there. And then we're going to do an intentional transition back into the spectral realm. And this is for two reasons. For one, certain cutscenes don't play while you're in the spectral realm, including one where we would normally see up here, because there's some NPCs involved with it that aren't loaded in the spectral realm. And that allows us to go up and over here with a double breakout jump and get over the wall there and get past there in the spectral realm, which is normally not possible. Then I'm going to do a crouch jump into a breakout regular jump in order to get over another cutscene trigger where Raziel is kind of talking about Melchiah's clan fallen to ruins here. And now we're going to do just another little shortcut with a double crouch jump to get up and through this window. And then one more breakout jump, and then a little bit of a motion sickness warning as we go down the spiral stairs there. It's a little bit funky, but we're going to go ahead and grab this warp gate here in Melchiah's domain. This is really important because we're going to be using this as a fast travel point a couple times later on. So normally in this section, there's like a ton of puzzle rooms that you have to go do to actually enter what I would call like the Zelda dungeon portion of Melchiah's domain. But by doing that, we just skipped it. This is normally the hallway you get access to when you reveal another pushable block, but we don't need to do that. So we're all good. And I'm going to go ahead and do a double breakout jump, and then another one right there. And then we're going to jump out of bounds onto this invisible piece of geometry. And so what we've done with this setup is we have essentially gotten ourselves into the Force Glyph Shrine. I'm a little bit too far back. You gotta be close enough to the soul there in order for it to get magnetized to you. So we are in the Force Glyph Shrine, which we're not supposed to be able to access until we have the upgrade once we collect Melchiah's soul. And so, as a result, this allows us to get the Force Glyph earlier. And you may be wondering, especially if you play this casually, you may be wondering, well, how come we need this Force Glyph spell? It's like the worst spell in the game, right? You would be right. However, there is something very special that this glyph can do that none other can, and it's very, very silly. So, before we get into that and see the consequences of this routing choice, I'm going to be going for a cutscene skip on the Force Glyph proper. If I manage to pause on the frame where I pick it up, I will be able to save and quit away, which allows me to skip about a 15-second cutscene. I double buffered there. So I did some pause buffers there to try to find the right frame, but I accidentally paused a little bit too quickly, so the input got eaten. Not a huge deal. Again, only 15 seconds or so. But as a speedrunner, emotionally it feels like 3 years, but you know how it goes. So either way, we're going to do another save and quit here. Whenever you save and quit, it will keep track of everything that you've done in the playthrough so far, but return you back to the bottom of the abyss, and right by the abyss is that warp gate that we passed earlier. And so we can use this to get the Force Glyph and then leave. Because normally after you do that sequence, you are stuck in there because you're supposed to use Melchiah's ability to get out. But no such cases here, so we're going to just teleport to Melchiah's domain instead, and then rematerialize. The nice thing too is we get put with a full HP bar as well, and we want to become material anyway here. So, alright, coming up is the big glitch of the run that enables incredibly fast movement. This is the flight glitch. I will explain how it works once I get into the pre-boss cutscene, but yep, we can fly now. I'm not going to have a height here, so I'm going to reset my flight. There we go. Make our way in through here through the ceiling that isn't loaded, and then get another flight glitch. And you're going to start to notice that we can go really fast with this flight glitch. Fast enough that we can go up and over this wall. We're going to fall down and look for a unloaded hallway here. That was... And then I do a very specific jump right there in order to make sure that the hallway itself doesn't deload. Because again, we're trying to make sure we hit all of our loading triggers. And then there we go. Okay. So how does that glitch work? So the Force Glyph, when you cast it, does this really fast spin-up animation before doing the shockwave that knocks enemies back. If you interrupt that animation with a breakout, it will put Raziel in a state where all of his animations are sped up. So he'll like fall faster, his jump animation will happen faster, his attack animations are faster. You get the idea. In this state, if you then go ahead and do a crouch jump, immediately press space again or jump again to glide, and then press the hover button, which just allows you to hover in place, it will do a weird thing with the animations that causes it to send you upwards instead of downwards because of like a negative animation speed situation. So depending on how you time all those inputs, you can get different types of flight. And that's where a lot of like the finesse and like skill expression comes into play with this game. There's many different variations of flight that you can set up, and they have different implications as well as different use cases. And we won't see that for a little bit because we're going into our first boss fight against Melchiah here. But very, very powerful glitch. And that's the big glitch that does not work on the original release of the game. I'm not exactly sure why. It's a little unfortunate, but it's how it be. So we're in Melchiah now, and there's three things we need to do. We need to lure him to 2 different sides of the arena and stab him with some spikes. And then we need to bring him to the center of the arena for the big blender here. So I'm going to wait here a little bit and then crouch jump up. This is going to maneuver Melchiah into that spot right there, so he is always guaranteed to walk into the gate right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and start walking this way. And then it's a little random what he decides to do from here. So we're going to be waiting for him to turn around and hopefully start making his way over here. I'm standing in specific spots just to try and manipulate his AI here. I think I got a little mixed up here. So he might be rude to me because I just got a little bit of a... Oh my god. Please? Thank you, Raziel. Alright, so he just should be just chilling outside. If not, I'm going to have to... Yeah, I think he's walking away, unfortunately. Come on, buddy. Alright, now he sees me. Okay. Yeah, that's a little unlucky. I try to get that to not happen with the minutes I do, but sometimes you just get a really weird... He can walk around a little bit randomly after the first damage phase, so that unfortunately kind of messed me up and lost me a little time, but not a big deal. It's pretty easy to recover. And it's like, you have to like actively be trying to get help by Melchiah, so this last part is really easy. He's just going to make his way into the center of the arena eventually. There we go. He's being a little bit sassy today, unfortunately. But we're just going to go ahead. You're going to just do a little crouch right there. Anytime that I need to come to a standstill, I'm going to crouch before doing any kind of input. And that's because when you let go of an input while you're like walking, like in a full walk cycle, you will skid a little bit once you stop. And you're unable to do any actions in that state. But if you do a crouch, you can cancel that crouch into whatever you want to do. So in that case, I crouched right before, so I didn't have to wait for the skid to be over before I activated the blender here. So that's going to be our first boss fight taking care of Melchiah. So like I think I mentioned this earlier, but you might have seen it during the boss too. Melchiah's ability allows you to phase through metal grates and certain objects while you're in the spectral realm. And the big reason why we route this boss first is because we need to be, this is a prerequisite to access a couple of later bosses. So we need this to access Zephon, and we also need this to access Cain more critically. So Cain is the big reason why we want to do this one first. This is going to allow us to get to the Soul Reaver a bit faster. And another thing as well is that we're not exactly stuck in here, but it would take us a long time to get out of here and backtrack through the dungeon here. So we're going to do another one of our classic quit and reloads, and then re-warp to the Abyss so we can go take on Cain here. To pass through, and you shall. Yeah, this game has some pretty iconic voice acting as well, so you may see me just mess around here and imitate it a little bit, just because it's fun. So part of the reason we route the bosses in the order that we do as well is because after defeating certain bosses or doing certain things and quitting and reloading, when you get back here, the Elder God will have a couple of lines of dialogue for you, depending on your story progress. And by doing the bosses in the order we do, we can avoid, like, basically the way we do this order eliminates the most of those possible with this specific sequence. So we're going to go ahead and open this door again with the breakout glitch, but we're going to go this direction this time. So we're going to go ahead and do the flight glitch just for the speed. The flight glitch, as you may see, is a lot faster than our standard movement. And so activating the flight glitch is a little bit tricky because after you animation cancel the Force Glyph spell, you actually have to take a step forward and then open the Glyph Select menu to get, like, a spin to start playing. And then you cancel that with the Glyph Select menu, and that activates the Super Speed. Alright, so we want to stay in the Spectral Realm here so that we avoid a pretty lengthy cutscene. So in the Spectral Realm, because we can't cast the Force Glyph spell, we can't normally fly in the Spectral Realm. So in that case, I do a platforming skip with the double crouch jump in order to get up and over there, and then I actually intentionally go through, like, the door collision there, because there is a loading trigger that we need to hit inside of that door. Otherwise, the path to the Kain boss arena just will not load properly. So, very, very, very important step. If you don't do that, you will be trapped, and you will not be able to do anything about it, which is really sad. So another one of those crouches right there, right before I enter the Kain fight, allows me to stop in my tracks and immediately cancel into the door opening animation. It might not seem like a lot, but it's those little things that really add up over the course of the run. Alright, so this is kind of the big chill time of the run. We've got a cutscene here and a cutscene after the fight, and then after that, it's just trick after movement for pretty much the rest of the run. So I'm going to use this as a little bit of a break to kind of catch my breath, because I kind of have a side stitch from talking so much, but I'm going to also let you all enjoy the excellent voice acting here, because this game is peak fiction, frankly. So, you're not God! I freaking love this game, but I will let you all enjoy, and then I will explain how the boss fight works when we're about to approach it. Encourage y'all to get a glass of water, stretch your hands, do some self-care, good vibes.
Your lifespan is a flicker compared to the mass of doubt and regret that I have borne since Mortanius first turned me from the light. To know that the fate of the world hangs dependent on the advices
of my every deed.
Can you
even begin
to see what action you would take in my position?
I would choose integrity, Kain. So there's actually a really funny glitch that can happen here, and specifically the 100% category, because in that route, we actually kill the boss Dumah first, which activates, for some reason, the ability to get hints from a ghost lady that we'll see after the boss fight. And that can cause you to gain movement during this cutscene, and it lets you do some really goofy shenanigans, just like taunting Kain before the fight, because you can just walk around freely. But unfortunately, we don't do that in this route, because that actually does lose a little bit of time, because an extra 7 seconds of dialogue plays, and we get another dialogue from the Elder God in the Abyss. Alright, so both Kain fights are going to have pretty easy manips. Kain will always spawn the opposite side that you're facing. So if we're in the middle of the arena, he's going to spawn in the back. So what I'm going to do is turn around. He's going to be right here. I'm going to poke him, jump twice, and then turn around. Poke. And then turn around. Poke, and then he's done just like that. Pretty easy boss, which is really nice. It can get kind of annoying if you accidentally take too long to get there and let him hit you, because it's pretty much a one-hit trip to the Spectral Realm once that happens, but yeah. A bit of a flashing lights warning during this cutscene. I will let you... Essentially, once we start hearing the Ghost Lady talk to us, that is the end of the flashing lights warning. There's just a bit of bright colors when we pick up the Soul Reaver, and some lightning strikes and all that jazz. So, just a bit of a warning in advance. Again, once the Ghost Lady starts talking, you can go ahead and look back at the screen if that's something that you are sensitive to. But we really want the Soul Reaver here, because it will give us a really big, like, speed increase going into a couple different areas, namely Zephon's domain, because that fight doesn't expect you to have the Soul Reaver, so it can let you do a pretty big quick kill there. But also, Rahab is immediately after this. And so, it's really convenient as well to go do this, and then we can sequence break to get to Rahab, because normally, you need to go defeat Zephon so you can climb the scratched surface that's on one of the pillars in the back. But we don't need to do that, because we can fly. So that's pretty rad. I believe there's a way to do that kind of skip as well in No Major Glitches, but I'm not an expert in that category, and I also know that jump is pretty rough. So don't quote me on that. But
when your strength is fully restored.
so the way the Soul Reaver works is kind of the way that like the upgraded Master Sword works in a couple of the Zelda games, where when we are specifically in the material realm, we'll have that blue sword, right? And when we take damage, it will disappear. It does a ton of damage to enemies and allows us to like do a finisher attack as opposed to having to use some sort of environmental effect to finish up one of the, whatchamacallit, vampires. And so my goal is to try to minimize taking damage as much as possible. And the big way I'm going to do that is actually with telekinesis that we're grabbing on our way to Rahab. So that's another big reason why we want to do this now. We could go technically do either Dumah or Zephon right now, but it'd be way slower to go do that. Again, because we're going to have Soul Reaver and telekinesis. Alright, so the Ghost Lady is here, meaning that you can look at the screen again if you are photosensitive. She's going to say Cain refused to sacrifice, which if you've ever played Soul Reaver 2 and sat on the loading screen, or on the title screen, that phrase may annoy you. It annoys me sometimes because I also run Soul Reaver 2 Remastered. I'm also submitting that, so feel free to check out that submission as well. I think it'd make a really cool bonus game to go along with this game, either with all bosses or the 100% run, so if you have any questions about that or what that kind of showcase would look like, feel free to let me know. Alright, so we're going to do a flight glitch and then set up a glitch afterwards called Flystop. So this is a pretty difficult sequence. Normally, flight and time stop are mutually exclusive because you can't cast spells during time stop, but I recently discovered a way to get over this, and it's because whenever you set up the flight glitch, you have to take that step forward. So there's actually a priming and activation phase to the flight glitch. So if you prime the flight glitch and then do time stop, you can then get flight during time stop, which we call Flystop. And so I'm going to try to set up for that here on this loading plane. So this one's pretty precise. So I'm using, okay, so we got the flicker. That means I have the glitch ready to go. There we go. And you're going to notice now that I have the ability to fly. One thing to note as well is I really don't have control over the camera while I am in time stop, especially while I'm in fly stop and able to like fly around like this. And so, okay, so the big reason we want to be in fly stop right now is because we can fly into this little gap right here, and this allows us to skip the entire Sarafan tomb section. And now we can go ahead and make our way straight to telekinesis. So there's a big 2-minute long cutscene right in front of Sarafan tomb. So by doing that fly stop setup, it allows us to get in and through that grate during time stop. There was an old strat using what's called a time stop telestab to get through there, but the fly stop setup is much faster because we get to fly. Alright, so this fight is probably the most dangerous combat in the entire run. Simply because this guy does not fight fair. He has like these homing... He has a projectile attack, which we are going to be stealing from him later. As well as this like... He's really good at closing distance, and like it's hard to avoid his attacks. So I'm going to try to maintain the Soul Reaver. It's not a guarantee. If I do, great. If I don't, I can just pick him up and throw him into the water. No biggie. Alright, I'm going to wait here just like a brief moment. And then go. So he got the hit on me there, so I can go ahead and just punch him. And so now I can just pick him up and throw him into the water, and he dies just like that. And luckily for us, I don't need to worry about my HP too much there because I will get a free heal once we acquire the telekinesis. Brief flashing lights warning, by the way. I missed a little bit of it there, but I will let you know when it's over. And we should be good. Okay. So this is telekinesis. It's one of my favorite abilities in the game because it lets you just shoot a projectile out forward from you, and it's a lot of fun. When you have the Soul Reaver as well, it's ridiculously fast startup and does a lot of damage. So it's a really good like get off me tool actually. And more importantly, it lets us move blocks from a distance. So right here, I'm going to manually shift into Spectral because there's a bit of an animation that plays if you are forcibly put into the Spectral realm by the water there. So it saves me a little bit of time there, as well as not having to grab souls. So So I mentioned earlier there's a couple of different types of flight. There's essentially two major, like, taxonomies of flight. There is either a upward flight or a low flight. And so an upward flight is really good when I need to get up and over something quickly. And a low flight is really good when I just kind of, like, need to navigate somewhere quickly, or I have, like, a low ceiling I need to worry about. And so different flight heights are used in different situations. Typically, sometimes you won't want anything other than a low flight because of another technique that I've been using a lot already called wing smashing or wing pumping, where if I press that hover button I mentioned earlier, it will actually slow me down and then give me a ton of extra flight speed, which can be really helpful. And so we're going to do another Flystop setup. I need to start by opening that door, and then I'm going to go ahead and prime the flight glitch once again, and then set up for the glitch here. Nice, we got that one first try. So for safety's sake, I would normally start the flight earlier here, but I'm going to go ahead and start it here so my camera is in a bit of a nicer spot. And then from here, we just fly all the way to here. And we just skip the entire Rahab's Drowned Abbey dungeon, essentially. So there's another, like, big area overview cutscene that plays when you enter Rahab's domain. And we just skip that using that Flystop setup. And we're now pretty much right outside the boss arena. So this is one of, like, the quickest bosses to take care of, too. Because we can just get here so quickly. It's actually really funny in 100% as well. Because we essentially do this area almost backwards in 100%. Where we take care of the boss fight first, and then we go into sort of the later areas of the dungeon and get all of the additional pickups for Hundo. It's a really cool segment. So right here, I'm going to do another double crouch jump. Again, I can't really, except for one, like, situation in Hundo, you can't activate the flight glitch in the Spectral Realm, again, because you can't cast spells unless you're in the Spectral Realm. And if you are, if you phase into the Spectral Realm, it actually unprimes your speed up glitch. So that's not an option either. Alright, so this is the Rahab boss fight. So Rahab is weak to water. Sorry, not weak. He can swim in water. Excuse me. He is weak to light. And so what we're going to do is use our newly acquired telekinesis projectile to shoot out all the stained glass windows on each face of the chamber here. I'm going to start by doing a bunch from a standstill and then try to turn myself around from there. And if I do this right, I can get a quick cycle where I only take one hit from Rahab and just take care of him all in one cycle. So once we actually get into the fight proper, I'm going to shut up so I don't accidentally miss my shots. Because for my specific keyboard input layout, I'm essentially holding the U and I buttons down and then pressing J to shoot, because that's how I just set up the game config when I first played it. So it's a little funky for me, and it requires me to focus a little bit. So that you would destroy me.
But tell me.
I freaking love the voice acting in this game. If you take this run in the marathon, expect me to imitate. I probably mentioned that earlier with Kane 1. But also, it's really funny, too, because Raziel shouldn't know any of this information because we skipped all of it when we cruised by the Sarafan tomb. But from what? From ourselves. That's the line I need to hear. That means that we are into the fight. I can't believe that hit. So once you get the first one lined up, you're kind of good to go. Ooh. Oh my goodness. Okay. So whenever you're in the non-Soul Reaver form, your projectile is a bit slower on startup. So you want to try to get as many of those as possible with the Soul Reaver projectile, as opposed to just the Shiakazi, as I call it. If you get that reference, I appreciate you greatly. So that's going to be boss 2 of 4, not including the Kane fights. So that is the third boss that you're intended to go fight. And so now we're going to go take care of Zephon, that's the second boss typically, and then take on Dumah, who's the last one here. And so Rahab here gives us the ability to swim. This isn't really helpful for us in this category because we skipped all of the parts where we would normally actually deal with water. But it's nice in a couple of spots because it prevents us from taking damage from, like, puddles of water, which prevents us from losing our Soul Reaver form. So once again, because we don't want to go all the way back, we're going to quit and reload, which is going to take us back into the Abyss here. And so we're going to see another one of these cutscenes here with the Elder God. So this is I think the wrong one, which is funny.
Soul. You may now
Yeah, no, oh, that's right, that's right. So this one's really funny because we've defeated the bosses in a weird order. It plays like the post Zephon defeat hint. It's so bizarre. It's like part of the reason why this route works out to be faster even. So we're actually not going to take the warp gate because the entrance to Zephon's domain is actually on the other side of the abyss here. So we're going to have to do some normal old platforming here. I don't think I mentioned this already, but whenever we're not doing flight, we're going to be jumping just because it's a lot faster than our normal walk cycle here. And another thing with the movement is I'm trying to avoid ledge grabs whenever possible. So when I'm doing this crouch jump here, I try to space it so that I don't get that ledge grab. Because when you're doing that ledge grab, you're stuck for about a second while the game plays the animation, and that's 1 second you could be using to move forward. So that ledge grab skip in particular is probably the hardest one in the game. I only get it like 10% of the time, just because the slope collision there is really funky. But we're going to go ahead and rematerialize here. The game normally expects you to stay dematerialized and then shift through that gate with Melchiah's ability. But if I can get the fight glitch, please. I know what I'm doing around. There we go. Then we can just cruise here just fine. One other thing with the flight glitch, and this will start to come up a lot in Zephon's domain specifically, is that if you hit one of those like wall surfaces, it'll hit like a slope slide animation and completely negate your like fly speed. So you got to be a bit careful there. So now we are forcibly shifted into the spectral realm. One of the other things we needed, one of the other reasons we wanted to do Rahab first is because we need the Soul Reaver to get in here, and it avoids like ping-ponging between the different areas of the game. Oh my goodness, he almost got me there. That was funny. So you're going to see the wing pumping a lot here, where it just lets us get a ton of speed. It's frankly hilarious. And then one thing I didn't mention as well is, not this door in particular, but with a lot of the walkable doors, it actually doesn't deactivate your speed glitch. There's a ton of little things I'm doing over the course of the run to prevent my speed glitch from disappearing. The biggest way you can deactivate your speed glitch is either by opening the glyph menu or for walking too far of a distance. So a lot of times you'll see me take these little stagger steps in order to like reposition myself. So like right there, I took a stagger step in order to make sure that I didn't lose my flight glitch. And then right here, there's normally a puzzle here that involves you activating a set of bellows to create an air draft that you can then glide up through with here. But we can fly our own way, so we just completely ignore it and skip a huge portion of the dungeon here. Spoiler warning, we're going to be skipping pretty much all of the dungeon here. And this is a big reason why I like running the OG over the remaster, is because you have a lot more options here in terms of skipping this stuff. All right, so I got a really tall fly here, so I'm going to do a little bit of a setup, and then I can maintain my super speed through the door here, and then telefrag this guy right here. We're gonna get a more of an upwards flight right here, so we can deal with the pipes. This is a really tricky room to navigate through. I actually might just have enough height just to not even have to reset the flight here. Let's see where the tunnel ended up being. Good save. And then we get put into a cutscene here that every time you go into a cutscene, it removes your super speed glitch. And you need your super speed glitch to fly. So there are two very dangerous spider zombies here. So I'm going to jump forward to dodge the one on my left, and then climb up to this platform to avoid the one on my right, hopefully. And then this is a really tricky upwards flight. See if I get it. Oh, nice. Like, second try is really good. Yeah, so you saw I ran forward there for too long, so that I accidentally canceled my flight. But you need a really particular setup in order to get up and through that tube. And I can't even begin to describe to you how much puzzle solving and really, like, back and forth running around that saves. Like, there are so many long puzzles in Zephon's domain that we just completely bypass with the flight glitch. And we also just get to zoom, so it's awesome. I would say Zephon's domain is probably the hardest in terms of raw flight control and movement, just because there's a lot of slopes you can get stuck on. The camera movement's really tricky. there's a lot of little things that I'm doing with my directional inputs as well as my camera controls to get myself unstuck. And sometimes, like, if I get my head stuck in a ceiling, I'll also use another wing pump in order to get me unstuck as well. So there's a lot of minutia that comes into play with the movement, especially in this section. Alright, so the Zephon fight is going to be a lot easier than it would be in a casual playthrough because we have the telekinesis projectile. Normally the way this fight works is each phase, he will strike down a couple of his big pincers hanging from the ceiling, and you need to attack them to destroy them, and then he'll give you an egg that you can use to light on fire, and defeat the boss that way. But because we have the Soul Reaver projectile, we can actually just shoot all of the spikes off of the ceiling, and just completely destroy him. And then we can kind of quick cycle him, because once all of his pincers are gone, he will, as soon as we hit him once, it'll just spawn the next egg, and allows us to quick cycle pretty easily here. So as long as I go far enough away, I won't get stabbed here. So I'm going to send out one projectile to kind of stun him, or just kind of bait him into attacking me in a certain way, and then I'm going to book it to the back of the arena so I don't get smoked. Muscle. Alright, so one poke, and you're going to see these will all go down in one hit pretty much. Again, another little crouch right there. A little unfortunate that I lost my Reaver right there, but not the end of the world. And so the way this sort of like fight works is that you pick up the egg and then you light it on fire, because this boss in particular is weak to fire. Which, you know, fair enough. And then this time, I'm just going to throw a projectile at him to bait him into making another egg here. Yoink. So we're going to steal another egg, light it on fire, and then he's going to explode. So the reward that you get from Zephon is the ability to, like, climb specific, like ledges and walls. But, like I mentioned earlier, not super useful for us, because we can just fly, right? So we're actually not going to quit and reload here. There's actually a warp gate right outside of this boss arena that we're going to use instead. If we were to save, quit, and reload, it would actually force us into another one of those Elder God dialogues in the Abyss, and we really don't want to see that. So instead, we're going to take that warp gate and then make our way to our fourth and final boss of the all bosses specific stuff, which is Dumah. It is arguably one of the trickiest parts of the run, especially due to a new Flystop setup that got routed into this category finally. It was funky for several reasons, but now we have a really consistent setup for it. And I'm really excited to show it off. This will be one of the first times it's been shown off in a recorded run, so. Because I have just been not able to get runs going out of the early game. You know how it goes. Alright, so I'm going to deactivate my speed glitch on purpose, because if you enter a warp gate with the super speed glitch active, sometimes it can activate a really weird soft lock where it won't let you activate the breakout glitch anymore, and we really don't want that. Alright, so we're going to menu over once, and then head through to the Abyss, and then we actually have to head left this time. It always messed me up when I started learning this category, because every time you go into the Abyss, otherwise, you head to the right. But that time, no, you head to the left instead. Alright, one more door glitch right here. And then we're going to head back this way, and then head forward instead. And then we're going to fly up and over that cutscene we skipped earlier, do a bunch of wing pumps to build up speed, and get us through as much of that hallway as we can. Setting up the flight glitch in these hallways can be really tricky because of the height restriction. Alright, we're going to prime a flight glitch here, and then try to get Timestop here. Got it. For safety's sake, I am going to go ahead and walk all the way up here before setting up the flight glitch. And so we can go ahead and actually... So this is a funky thing, because there's a cutscene that plays once you pass by that door. So I'm going to jump over it, and then I need to jump back in order to hit a loading trigger so that the rest of Zephon's... Or not Zephon's, Dumah's fortress load in properly. And then here we're going to do what's called the blast door deload. So by closing the menu and reopening it in Timestop, it will cause this actor for the blast door to deload so we can pass through it. Normally, that door is only accessible after you blow it open in this sequence that we're going to do right here. And the reason that we want to go through this way is the flight path is a bit faster than the intended route, as well as it skips another cutscene that would interfere very heavily with the whole Flystop setup and would basically prevent us from doing the flight glitch for the rest of the run, which we really, really don't want. Alright, so we need to break open the blast doors here as a prerequisite to defeating Dumah. We skipped so many puzzles, by the way, in this, for lack of a better term, dungeon by doing that. Gonna do another flight glitch to get over here. And as you can see, I'm kind of doing these like little adjustment jumps so I don't accidentally cancel my flight glitch. And then we get a really fun movement section through here. Oh, I might have beefed it. Okay. And then at this point, we hit a cutscene that will remove my flight anyway, so I'm not super worried about that last little bit. And then this is a puzzle room, actually, where you're supposed to shift between the spectral and material realms in order to make certain platforms appear and disappear, but we're just going to fly over it instead. Yeah, so I had to do a little bit of a tricky turn there, because again, 8-directional movement. And sometimes, like, in both this and Soul Reaver 2, Raziel likes to turn like a tank sometimes. So right here, there's a good example of the animation speed-up glitch allowing us to fall faster, which in turn gets us down here a lot faster. This just skipped a ton more puzzles as well, because there's a whole sequence you need to be able to do in order to get there in the material realm to be able to push that over. So right here, I'm doing the breakout glitch on that door so that it actually avoids me. Hold on. It actually enables me to do a double crouch jump over another cutscene trigger that you'd normally be forced into. And weirdly enough, that cutscene trigger is one way. So as long as I skip it on the way in, it'll be fine on the way out, which is... I've never heard of anything like that in a video game. Like, I've never heard of a one-way cutscene trigger before. It's so random to me. Alright, so this is the Dumah fight. I will probably be quiet for the entirety of this fight, because this entire fight is manipulating Dumah to make his way over to that furnace and then roasting him alive. And this proves to be pretty tricky, because if you want him to run as fast as possible, which requires him to be far away from you. If he's too close to you, he'll walk at you or even attack you, which is really, really bad. If he's too far away, he'll end up doing a ground slam attack that can stun you if you don't jump. And it also just wastes a bunch of time. So essentially, I need to play this like cat and mouse game where I'm far enough ahead of him to force him into the fast run, but not too far in order to make sure he doesn't do that fist attack. So there's going to be little things I need to do where sometimes Dumah will just pause his movement as well. And I need to react to some of these things on the fly because it's not always 110% consistent. So slowing down right there, I was a little too fast there, so he got a little bit ahead. But now, I can go ahead and safely lure him for a little bit, because once you see at least one fist attack, it'll be a little bit before he can do another. That's really unlucky. So, his pathing got caught on the wall there. So there's a pretty specific way you have to take the corner there to prevent that from working. And then I slow down right there. So if you let him get too close, he can do that slow walk, which gives him opportunities to do the punch. Yeah, so I had to really slow down there because he almost screwed me in the same way he did earlier. Usually it's the corners that'll get you on this fight. We're getting a good rhythm now. Once you get him into this hallway, it's pretty rare that he does it, as long as you do the manip correctly. And then once he's in this room, I'm going to wait a little bit and then jump, throw the spear, and then pull the lever, and that's the Dumah boss fight. Alright, so Dumah's ability is probably the most not helpful in the game. It's called Constrict. If you walk around in a circle, it'll create this like band of energy that lets you rotate certain things in the environment and also does pretty big damage to enemies. But we're never going to end up using it because we can just fly over the one use for it. So, yay, yippee, more flight. So we're going to do another quit and reload once again, and this is partly due to the Flystop that we did earlier. There's not really a good setup for going the return way out of this dungeon. It would be very fast if we had a method to do that. And it's close. It's almost there. But then a soft lock happens while you try to do it that prevents you from disabling Timestop. And that soft locks the entire run, essentially. So we're going to have to do another quit and reload here, and then we'll get to zoom through Dumah's domain again into sort of the endgame gauntlet, which is maybe one of my favorite parts in the run, because it's got some really crazy Timestop shenanigans. So if you like that like weird Timestop teleport I did at the very start of the run, we're going to do a bunch of those in the endgame to skip pretty much right to Kane.
In the furthermost canyon of Nosgoth's frozen wastes, the hushed silences embrace an ancient
Alrighty, so
in the bowels of this labyrinth, your master
Stir awaits. It's also really good that we saved here too. I'm actually going to save again, just so in case something bad happens, we don't have to listen to that dialogue again. Sometimes the game can be funky. Alright, and I'm going to lock in for a little bit while I focus on the movement through the Abyss once again. And I'm specifically setting up my flight a little further out than I technically need to, just because I really don't want to deal with that enemy, because he's quite obnoxious. And we'll get the wing pumps going there. Oh, this is going to be a really fast flight. If you get too fast of a flight through there, sometimes you have to be a little bit careful. So one thing with the wing smashing is that every time that you do it, it will cause you to lose a little bit of the height that you have set up. So if you're going to do a really, like, long, extended flight, you're actually going to want one of those higher velocity flight glitches set up so that you can wing smash a bit more and get a bit more value out of it. Alright, so this is where the scary part is. I'm going to set up Flystop, but we're not going to be proccing it until much later here. Okay. So I need to set up Timestop here on this loading plane. You can kind of see the pixels where it's a little bit funky. I gotta be very careful here, because if I do this wrong, the game can crash. So that's why I made the safety save. Game does not want to let me into that position. There we go. Okay, good. We got it without crashing. Nice. If you cancel out of certain things with that too fast, it will just crash the game. So we're going to unload and reload the glyph menu right next to that guy. And then we're going over a very specific set of loading triggers here in a certain order, so that basically the game thinks I am standing right next to him. And so as a result, if I press the J button that I have it bound to, it will try to stab at him. And so I'm trying to do a pause buffered telestab right there to get me clipped through. And this allows me to skip a constrict puzzle and like the first set of puzzles before heading into the final dungeon, really. So we're going to continue to be in Timestop here for a little bit, for most of this section actually. And then this is really critical that I get this right. So I need to go 1, 2, 3. And you're going to see the glyph menu flicker there. Every time that happens, that means I'm crossing over a loading zone. And I'm going to jump and then press the stab button and hold to the right. This allows me to stay in an airborne state once I do the telestab. And again, the game still thinks I'm trying to stab that enemy I set it up on a while ago. So because of that, it's going to kind of stab me at an arbitrary location. And in this case, it'll let us stab past a bunch of really annoying puzzles. All right, right here, I'm going to reset my telestab target on that enemy right there. This is going to enable a telestab that's going to essentially skip this room by shooting me into this corner. And then one thing that's nice as well is that during Timestop, all of time is stopped, including the enemies, which is really helpful. We're going to just do a crouch jump and then glide up the ledge right there. That lets us skip that entire room. And then I'm going to reset my telestab target on this enemy right here. And we have one more telestab that we're going to do before the final set of hallways leading up to the final boss fight. All right, this last one's a little bit tricky, so I'm going to take a safer version of it where I do the jump version. So I get a better camera, and then we head over this door, and now we're done. So now we're going to go ahead and proc that flight glitch I set up, and motion sickness warning, because we're going to start flying very, very fast through these next couple of hallways here. So this is also, as it might look, really hard to control. There's these pillars that get in the way, too, that are really freaking obnoxious. It's a whole freaking thing. So there's a lot of these hallways, too. And the time stop here is really nice because every time I go past one of those weird starry gates, it would initiate another cutscene. So this is allowing us to maintain our flight glitch all the way through here. And then in through this last hallway, I can wing pump even more to get some more value. And then right here, I can go ahead and hit the sword button, and that lets us open the door, canceling time stop, taking us into the final boss fight here. All right, this has been a pretty solid run so far. Awesome, awesome. So I'm going to do my thank yous while we're kind of in this final boss fight, because this is a pretty long cutscene, and this will be a really funny time to, like, talk about the voice acting and just the game in general during the run, or, you know, donations, obviously. But I just wanted to thank you all so much if you're still watching this submission video. Again, I know your time is super valuable here, so thank you so much for considering this run. This game means a whole lot to me, and I just think this category is super sick. Additionally, I've also submitted the 100% category, as well as Soul Reaver 2 Remastered, which I'm kind of submitting as an incentive to go along with either of these Soul Reaver 1 categories. I think it would be a really cool way of, like, pushing the donations forward for, like, a bonus game type of thing for Soul Reaver 2. That's another really funny run if you haven't checked it out, by the way. But yeah, feel free to take a look at either the 100% run or that Soul Reaver 2 potential incentive as well. I would really super appreciate it. Again, thank you so much for your time. I know you all are super busy, so I just appreciate it. And I hope this video has been a strong argument for including this run in the event. So, similar to the first Kain fight, Kain 2 can also be manipulated in the same way, where he will, depending on, if you stand in the same spot, he will teleport to the same part of the arena every single time. So my goal is to turn around so that the camera is facing where I want to go, exactly where Kain's going to be, and then just rush towards him. It can be pretty tricky to get to him quickly if he, like, things get out of hand. But if you do it right, he's in the same spot every single time. So now he's going to teleport down to ground level, and then once Raziel goes down to ground level, I'm going to start to kind of lock in and just make sure I, like, tap it in and don't mess up this fight here. So time is going to be on the final hit on the last bit of the Kain fight. So
Mobius foretold mine a millennium ago.
Yeah, so right now Kain's kind of talking about Mobius, which is sort of one of the big antagonists of Soul Reaver 2 and Defiance as well.
Free will.
It's an illusion.
I have been to the tomb of Sarafan.
Yeah, so we're just getting, again, huge lore bomb here. This also happens to be, like, the opening, like demo cutscene for Soul Reaver 2 as well, which I find kind of interesting. So kind of as a way to catch you up if you didn't play the first one, which is a shame if you haven't, because this game freaking rules. Like I said, this game got remastered in December, along with Soul Reaver 2. So if you haven't tried these games yet and these look super fun to you, go ahead. They're great games, especially Soul Reaver 1. Alright, so I'm going to shut up now and go for the last couple of hits here, and time will be on final hit. See y'all on the other side.
Whose passion transcends all notions of good and evil.
I will not applaud your clever blasphemy. The Sarafan were saviors, defending Nosgoth from the corruption that we represent. My eyes are opened, King.
My eyes are opened,
I
King.
know nobility in the unlife you rudely forced on my unwilling
Corpse.
You may have uncovered your past, but you know nothing of it. You think the Sarafan were noble, altruistic? Don't be simple. Their agenda was the same as
ours.
You are lost in a maze of moral relativism, King.
I have to say as well, the writing is just so good. Like, Maze of Moral Relativism is such a bar.
And now, you await my latest move.
Alright, here we go. So, I'm going to tap the camera center and hit him right there. That's hit number 1. Hit number 2 will be coming up in a little bit here. so he's just going to spawn on the other side. It's going to put me in a default position, so I can just turn my camera, wait for him to spawn in, jump up here to avoid a ledge grab. Boom. This is the last phase. It's kind of scary, and like I said, we'll call time on final hit here. All right, and we'll get ready on time soon. Oh, I might be slow here. I'm definitely slow here. Tragic. Oh, I got him! Oh my goodness, that's time. And that is also, I believe, world record. Not by much. It's like a 10-second record, but I believe that is record. So allow me to just check for one moment. Yeah, that is record by about 10 seconds. All right, well, I guess this is just going on YouTube as well. But yeah, like I said, thank you so much for watching this submission video and this world record, I guess. I will catch you all later if you're watching for the world record part. But again, thank you to committee for watching this, and have a good rest of your day. Peace out.
Be warned, Raziel. Once you cross this threshold...
All right, if you're on committee and you're still watching for some reason, feel free. I'm just going to get to the end credits here. Show off the end credits a little bit, celebrate. And then we get to see Mobius, who you'll see in Soul Reaver 2. Oh my goodness, that was actually pretty good. Raziel.
Redeemer and destroyer.
Pawn and Messiah.
Welcome,
Time stream. Oh, I got the line wrong.
welcome
To your destiny. Yippee! Alright, GG's.